Welcome back to another TradingView tutorial video. Today we are going to show you financial metrics on TradingView and how to use them to accomplish your goals around valuations, financial information, and getting the key underlying business details that you need to know about a company like Apple. Now, if you did just pay close attention, you'll notice up at the search box, we click it to open it, and we type in a symbol, any symbol that we're interested in. But keep in mind, business metrics or financial information is generally only available for publicly traded companies like Apple. You could type in Tesla, or you could type in Amazon, any company that you're interested that is publicly traded. Let's stick to Apple for now. Now, when this drop down appears, you're going to notice you have two options. You can launch the chart, so you will go immediately to a beautiful web-based chart of Apple, AAPL, or you can click See Overview, which is what we're doing here. The overview page is where you can get key details and information about the company you're interested in. This might be a company that you have on your watch list. As you know, your watch list is up here. This could be a company that you just discovered and want to dive into and research. Look first, then leap. Or it could just be a curiosity that you have about a specific company. Now you'll notice there's the Minds feed down here and the Ideas feed here. These are key social features to learn what other traders and investors are saying about a specific company. In addition, as you scroll down, you will get some key details like technicals, so a blended detailed data point about the technicals of a specific position, an analyst rating, what are they saying, buy, strong buy, neutral, sell, strong sell, and then of course some key financial metrics in a very compressed view. But the point of this video is actually to focus on the financials tab right here at the top of the symbol page, which we'll click right away. Now this page has been fully redesigned and updated to make your understanding of a company easier, faster, and more efficient. Before we scroll down and show you all of this wonderful financial information, let us first remind you that you can see upcoming earnings right here, February 2nd. You can see earnings per share. You can see market cap. You can see yield, and you can see PE ratio. These are common financial metrics that every investor or value investor or analyst should just want to see right away. When's the next earnings report? Because when an earnings report is released, all of this information gets updated. Now let's dive into the beautiful AAPL fundamentals and what we have here. Now there's a brief summary right here at the top to tell you sort of what's going on with Apple. And when you scroll your mouse down, you're going to see income statement, balance sheet, cash flow. You can also look at quarterly numbers or annual numbers. So for those who are not familiar, this is what Apple's income statement is over 12 months. And this is what Apple's income statement is at each quarterly earnings report. And remember, quarterly earnings happen every 3 months. You can see Q4, Q3, Q2, Q1, and then Q4 21. So one quick tip here is remember, this is 2022, Q4 2022. They did revenue of $90 billion. They did net income of $20 billion, and their profit margin was 22.9%. So one other great feature about these visuals is you can hover your mouse over to read the exact numbers about what's going on, and you can get a very simple, quick trend here about what's happening with earnings. If you click annual, well, you're just going to get the year 2022, 2021, 2020. 2019, 2018. And the key thing about this view is that if you have quarterly on, you'll see that profit margin has been declining. And that might concern you because you've just started your research process. But guess what? Be sure to click annual so that you can zoom out and get the full picture. Sure, we see that profit margin has declined quite a bit, but this might just be seasonality. Q1 might be historically the strongest profit margin month. So if we click annual, now we can actually see that profit margin on a yearly basis, and actually profit margin looks quite healthy and steady up here, especially relative to 2018, 2019, and 2020. Now, everything that we just explained to you is the same here for the balance sheet, So you can actually see total assets, total liabilities, and debt to assets, as well as cash flow. So operating cash flow, investing, and financing. Same thing, click annual to see annual trends, quarterly to see quarterly trends. In addition, the scale here will adjust with the time frame that you're on. So you can see it's going to be now 400 billion annually, or about 140 billion quarterly. That's because annual is adding up every quarter and showing you a full year, so these numbers will be larger. On the right, if the company pays a dividend, you'll see some key stats about the dividend yield, the last payment, the ex-dividend date, and as well as a payout ratio. Keep going down and you have earnings and revenue. All of these buttons are clickable, by the way. So if you wanted to look at the income statement, you could click any of these to get a quicker view. In addition, you have the tabs up here for you to sort through. So if you click statements, you are now going to get a wonderful breakdown of Apple's financial statements. Once again, you have a brief overview here. And as you scroll down, you're now going to see these columns giving you a very comprehensive look on the income statement of Apple. Okay, let's go back up here to the top here, because this is where things get fascinating, complicated, but it's also vital that you understand how this works. Okay, we are at the income statement. Part of the Statements tab is also the balance sheet and the cash flow. These are statements that a company files once they've reported earnings or had an end of the year report. So you can view these three statements, income statement, balance sheet, or cash flow, on a quarterly basis. Let's actually go to income statement, quarterly, or annual. So if you're interested in what Apple did in total revenue each year, you can see that here. 2016, 214 billion. 2017, 228 billion. And you can just see Apple's growth in revenue right in front of you each year. And there's even a TTM marker. This means trailing 12 months. So you can kind of get a feel if you're on pace compared to previous years or not. In this example, it would appear that Apple has already reported Q4 2022, so that's quite interesting. You can kind of see that their trailing 12 months is just mimicking the 2022 total revenue, but by the next earnings report, this will be different because it will include the last 12 months. So it would be the first quarter of 2023, Q4 2022, Q3 2022, and Q2 2022. So remember, TTM, trailing 12 months. Let's go back to quarterly. Same thing. Here you have Q4 2022, Q3 2022, and you get the idea going all the way back to 2021 in this example. If you scroll down, you are going to see some color coding here. So what does this color coding mean? This color coding actually points back to this wonderful visual you have up here at the top. So you'll see here it says total revenue blue. Well, on this visual here, blue is total revenue. So you can quickly see what you've got selected to create this beautiful visual at the top. If you unselect or select, it will actually disappear. This means you can create your own visual on each symbol page. So we're going to uncheck everything, and now look, it's empty. Well, let's have some fun. How awesome is this? Maybe we actually want to look at, let's look at operating expenses. So we're going to click operating expenses. Why don't we go to taxes? Let's see what they're paying in taxes. How about we go to something really unique like EBITDA? Let's have EBITDA. Now remember, this is very random. We're not trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. We're just showing you how you can create your own visuals up here at the top by selecting specific financial metrics that you're interested in. Additionally, this works for each tab. So if you wanted to measure total assets on the balance sheet, you could. So let's go to income statement and let's actually unselect everything. Okay, now let's go to balance sheet and let's create one with total assets, total liabilities. Oops, Let's exit. We click the Help Center. Oops, there we go. Click. And how about total equity? So now we have a balance sheet visualization right here. Let's go to cash flow and let's do the same thing. At this point in the video, we hope you're understanding just how dynamic these pages are for you to create your own quick visuals about a company's financial situation. More importantly, we hope that you're really comprehending just how much information there is here for you to dive into. Because one thing we haven't shown you yet, but is so cool and important to see, is for these tabs like total assets, there's a little arrow that you can click. And when you click that arrow, the breakdown begins, because you can now dive deeper and deeper into a company's financial situation by specific line items. So total assets, for example, includes everything: property, plant, and equipment, cash on the balance sheet, as well as other holdings that the company may categorize as assets. But if you wanted to break that out a little bit, for example, here's cash and short-term investments, or total receivables, or total inventory, well, you can now click total inventory, and now your visualization up here is becoming a total inventory visualization. So these little arrows allow you to click the drop down and see each line item. So we can even do short-term debt. Why don't we look at inventory and debt? Well, here it is, short-term debt. Q4 2022 was 22.7 billion. Total inventory was 4.95 billion. Actually, one thing you might quickly gather from this is that Apple maintains its inventory at a fairly steady rate and apparently has great inventory control, as well as having what looks to be a low in inventory in the last quarter. However, their debt is at 22 billion, which appears to be the second highest number since Q2 21. And if we do annual, Apple currently has the most debt it's had in years and potentially ever. Now, before we move on to statistics, dividends, and earnings, one reminder that is pretty important here is that this really comes down to your understanding of a company's financial situation. So if you really want to dive into the financial situation of Apple, it's incredibly important that you also take the time to learn what these terms are. You may not know what cost of goods sold is. Well, if that's the case, you're going to see little question marks here. And these are tool tips to show you a description of what these terms are. So if you don't know what revenue is, click the question mark and our Help Center will instantly open up some basic information for you. This is a free dictionary for you to learn everything about a company's financial situation. Now, one final note about this tooltip is learning the financial situation of a company can be quite complex. And the best way to learn is just to dive in yourself and begin experimenting and reading and learning about how these companies report their earnings or what their business really is. And the best way to do that is to do everything we're showing you in this video. Head over to the Financials tab right here, click Statements, and get started with all the tips that we've shown you so far, including going through the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. Let's move over to statistics. Now, statistics is where you're going to find valuation ratios, profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, and solvency ratios. These are some of the most common ratios that you probably have seen around the news, in the media, or expressed by professional investors. For example, the price to earnings ratio. You're going to find that in this tab called Statistics. Price to sales ratio, price to cash flow ratio, price to book ratio, enterprise value to EBITDA or EBIT. In this example, why don't we just look at two really common ones, which is price to earnings ratio. This means how much are you paying for each dollar of earnings, or price to sales ratio, which means how much are you paying for each dollar of sales. And let's go to annual to get a long-term trend. Apple currently in 2022 had a price to earnings ratio of 24.6 and a price to sales ratio of 6.2. Well, now we can use this visual to get a feel for just, where that stands over the course of history. Well, it would appear its price to earnings ratio was actually at its lowest point since 2019 when it was 18.4. But its price to sales ratio is 6.23, and that is still what appears to be the third highest level since 2016. So you can see how quickly you can use this statistics tab to get some basic facts and stats. Once again, if you don't know what these ratios are, let's do price to book, and actually let's do total common shares outstanding. We can even look at the number of employees. Well, let's look at number of employees. This is a fun metric just to show up here. If you don't know what these mean, once again, there is a tooltip right here for you to click. So if you're struggling to understand what price to cash flow is, click the tooltip and get started with your research and education. Also, as you know, the World Wide Web is filled with informational material about how to better understand a financial company, and it really comes down to you doing the necessary research you need to do to best understand the underlying fundamentals of a company. Now we have number of employees clicked, and how cool is this? You can now see Apple has 164,000 employees, which appears to be a record for number of employees that they've ever hired. Because last year was 154,000, and it just continues to trend down each year before that. So once again, the statistics tab is essential if you're looking to find out more about the ratios of a company or to create your own visualization here up at the top. And remember, on all of these tabs, be sure to scroll down, because if you end up on the statistics tab, for example, you're going to come here and you're going to scroll down and you're instantly going to see some key stats and valuation ratios. And those might catch your attention quickly, but keep scrolling because there's so much more that these pages offer you. Profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, and solvency ratios. Really quickly on that note, these liquidity ratios and solvency ratios are excellent for understanding the debt ratio of a company, how much cash they have to pay back their debt or their obligations, how flexible they are to invest in the future compared to paying down debt, just to get a feel for what type of financial situation they're in, or if they have more assets than debt, all sorts of questions like that. Let's move on now to the dividend section. The dividend section is where you can learn more about how much money a company pays in dividends per quarter. And you can view the dividends section just by simply clicking the tab up here. There's a basic overview at the top. And as you scroll down, you're going to get so much information about a company's dividend history. Now, all of that history is shown to you right here. So you can see dividends per share, dividend yield. You can even click to get a payout ratio, maybe to better understand, what is the company paying out to its investors as a percentage of its profit. So you can kind of get a feel of, is this company paying out a lot of money as a percentage of its net income, or is it really just a small percentage? And this is sort of a very not safe, but they have flexibility to continue paying out this dividend well into the future. This dividend payout history, in addition, can be quite helpful so you can see the quarterly frequency of such dividends, the amount paid, the date, the pay date, the record date, and the ex-dividend date. So actually, if you go to the bottom and just scroll up, you're quickly going to see 13 cents they paid per quarter, 14 cents, 16 cents, 18 cents, 19 cents, 20 cents, 22 cents. It appears that every year Apple's been increasing their dividend pretty consistently. That is, a lot of investors would consider that quite impressive because it means that they are generating enough income to continue to pay out holders more and more in forms of a dividend. Now, if we click earnings, we all know how important earnings is to a company. After all, you wouldn't have these financial statements. You wouldn't have an income statement. A company potentially wouldn't even have a balance sheet if they're not a real business generating some form of income at some point. And of course, the cash flow is also key to having, or to understanding cash flow. The company has to have some money coming in the door, or the cash flow will be quite negative, if not non-existent. So if we go to earnings, this is where we will learn more about a company's earnings, once again, quarterly or annually. This tab is probably the first place you want to go to if it turns out a company is reporting earnings soon. So this video is being recorded in January. We are not far from Apple's next earnings report. As a way to get prepared for that earnings report, we can come to the earnings tab, click quarterly, and get a very, very quick and crystal clear understanding of where Apple is in their reporting cycle. Because there is a forecast section, and this is an analyst estimate of what Apple will report. These are average these are average estimates from analysts across Wall Street, or are considered institutional investors, or are considered some form of professional research as regarded by Wall Street and financial markets in general. Keep in mind, just because these estimates are coming from Wall Street professionals does not mean they are accurate. Actually, there are some traders and investors out there who think that this is a contrarian signal, and they like to take the opposite side of these so-called professionals. But then again, there are some people who like this data and follow it closely and think it's accurate. Or there are those who simply just don't care because they have their own models, or they're following the charts, or they're doing their own research to suggest that it's better for them than following these estimates. So we can see here some information about Apple's earnings and revenue. The top visualization is going to be earnings. You're going to see what we have here: Apple's reported earnings and Apple's estimated earnings. The reported earnings is in blue. This is what Apple literally reported. It is a real factual report. It is what happened and what was filed with the government and with all investors. The gray bar is estimated. So this is what the professionals said, so-called professionals, as some of you might say, but this is what they thought Apple would do. So why does this matter? Well, now you can see how often Apple beats the estimates. So Apple reported 1.29 earnings per share on Q4 2022. The estimate was 1.27 earnings per share, and that means Apple beat the analysts' expectations by 2 cents per share, and you can see the percentage here, 1.74%. So you can see all of Apple's, what they reported versus what the analysts said, and what percentage beat that is. You can also get rid of the estimates, as we've been saying on each tab here. Just click it to remove it, and you'll quickly see that there is a reported EPS right here in blue. It's all we have selected. If you only want to see the estimate, continue to follow our instructions. Only have the estimate selected. So let's say Apple is reporting earnings, as we know, on February 2nd, 2023. Well, we know the estimate is 1.96. Let's go back a year to Q1 2022. They reported 2.10. So that's quite interesting. The analysts think 1.96, but this time last year, Apple did 2.10. As you can see, they crushed analyst expectations last year. Will they do it again? That remains to be seen, but that is quite interesting. And you can quickly see how you can compare certain earnings reports with prior earnings reports to get a feel for if Apple might beat again, if the trend might stay the same, or are analysts sort of pushing up their estimates because they expect a big number, or they're pushing those estimates down because they expect a lower number. If we scroll down, everything we just said is right here for you once again, but this time for revenue. So this is earnings per share. How much is a company earning per share outstanding? This is revenue, which is just a total number of how much revenue a company is generating. Apple does huge amounts of revenue, as you can probably, or you've probably already noticed throughout this video. Q4 2022, they did $90 billion in revenue. It's just a gigantic number, and the estimate was $88.74 billion, so they clearly beat. And once again, you can use these tables down here the same way as we showed you here for earnings, and you can see they beat by 1.5%. And here's every earnings or revenue that Apple reported going back to Q1 21 and the analyst estimate. If we click annual, very similar to everything we've been saying, now you can see annual earnings or annual revenue. And if you would prefer to just look at revenue on an annual basis, no estimates, look at this beautiful visual here. We can see Apple did $394 billion in 2022, last year $365 billion, and in 2020 $274 billion. And hopefully this is all starting to make sense to you. So this is the Financials tab. We hope that this video has really given you a crystal clear walkthrough of how to read all of this and how to get a feel for what's going on. It is a tab that if you are an investor, if you are looking to understand the basics of a business, if you are looking to really research a company before you even think of buying or selling it, this tab can be incredibly helpful. You can customize the visuals up here. You can look back in time on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. You can also click these tooltips to learn more about what each of these metrics mean, so you can get a real-time education. And in addition, you can go through quite literally everything that a company files as a publicly traded company, including its income statement, its balance sheet, its cash flow, all of the line items that these statements produce. You can look at its statistics, as we mentioned, valuation ratios, and more. You can look at its dividends, if it pays out a dividend, and what that dividend history looks like. And of course, you can dive into its actual earnings with specific estimates from analysts to see how if the company is often beating analyst estimates, underperforming those estimates, or perhaps staying in line. Or if you don't care about estimates and just want to see the raw earnings numbers on a quarterly or annual basis, you can simply only have the reported earnings selected, do not have the estimate highlighted, and you can hover your mouse over to get a feel for what the trend is or see every number here in the table. So this is the fundamental sections on TradingView. We absolutely cannot wait to hear what your feedback and opinion is on all of this, and we especially encourage you to go dive in. This type of research takes hours, if not weeks and months to master. There are people who spend their careers going through a company's fundamentals and its core business, and this is one of the places where you can start. It's all right here, ready for your consumption, totally free. All you have to do really is log into your TradingView account, or in some instances, you don't have to be logged in, and you can begin your financial journey, not only in understanding how a business works, but also understanding what all of these line items mean and what this information is, or how to visualize it right here perfectly for everything that you want to see and learn. And it's open and ready for you when you're ready to leap into this. Head up to the search box, type in the symbol that you're interested in, click See Overview, and then there's the Financials tab. Click the Financials tab, and you are ready to get started. Leave any questions or comments below, and please send us feedback. Thank you for watching.